So we are very grateful to Hector Ceballos, who is our technical assistant with the Zoom connection. Thank you very much. Very much.
On the contrary, thank you.
So, greetings from Hovea Ashram, Perth, Australia. My name is Manita Beskow. I'm a yoga and meditation practitioner for over 50 years and work as a psychologist and Jungian analyst. I acknowledge the Aboriginal people, custodians of this land which we have the privilege of living in. I also honor Dr. de la Ferrière and his wife, his first woman disciple, Louise Reynaud. I acknowledge, too, our spiritual ancestors, past and present, and all humans. Today, 10 brilliant women join together to celebrate, recognize, and empower globally past, present, and future women, especially those who have contributed and continue to contribute with their commitment to their own well-being and that of others, physically, mentally, and spiritually. The time came when the 21st century arrived, embedded within its core the vision of a more balanced world, where gender equality, recognized by conscientious women and men, brings the natural forces of sexuality alive, aiming to be understood as part of human nature and to be treated with respect and honor in a relationship. The time arrived when we have the education and capacity to own our own shadow, jealousy, ignorance, anger. It is a time to resolve conflicts with the ability to celebrate through joy, grace, truth, and tolerance. It is also a time for each person to recognize his, her own emotional strengths and overcome obstacles, moving from a victim state to a stage of heroine, hero, where to serve humanity is the motto of their lives. This means the water carriers can pour out the water of wisdom and light and make the heart a center of intelligence, so that our planet can experience a period of peace. To end this introduction, we again acknowledge the women who have offered their lives with time and wisdom for the excellence of our planet. These are the great mothers throughout the ages. Like my own mother, Jenny Beskow, Mother Teresa, Jacinta Ardern, Angela Merkel, and so many others like you who are participants in this event, yet are committed to a balanced life where yoga, meditation, and prayer are all integrated into the daily life, aiming to develop the capacity to seeing before seeing. Thank you to all of you. I will be the co-host, so Manita have the privilege of introducing our outstanding women speakers. The order of speakers: Britt Garrett, Kate Barrett-Leonard, Vivian Bainbridge, Sally Hertzfeld, Annie Girard, Dr. Sadhana Bose, Dr. Cedar Chambers, Sophia, and Lorna Dick. So we're starting with Britt Garrett, who is a Jungian analyst in private practice in Fremantle and Margaret River. She is a mother of 2 grown children, a gardening enthusiast, and a nature lover. She spent her free time wandering the forest and watching her turkeys. She is a keen interest in astrology and is an avid observer of the quality of our time. Thank you, Britt.
Thank you, Manita, and thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for bringing us all together to celebrate the potential of women in the 21st century. When Manita first mentioned this talk to me, I was really excited because I could immediately think of all these fabulous young women who really do represent our future. Women like in Grace Tame in Australia, she was last year's Australian of the Year. Grace Tame, Brittany Higgins, and on the global stage we have Greta Thunberg. All these women, all these young women are really speaking up. They're speaking to those in authority, speaking truth to people in power. And this is so brave and it's so important. And it's like the Me Too movement, really. Like it's these individual voices saying, this is my story. This is what I have to talk about. I'm not turning a blind eye. I'm speaking out. I'm speaking my truth. And yet they're doing it too. It's me too, me with other women, me in a community of women. And I just think that's so powerful right now. Me too. And it really speaks perfectly to the astrology of the moment as we head into the age of Aquarius, that Aquarius is about individuals, individual voices that come together to make humanity. We're coming out of the age of Pisces, which was about authority. It was mostly about religious authority, that there's one God, there's one way of looking, that there's, you know, that we have to sort of, there's the priest who talks about God. But now it's about our own individual relationship with God and with the world and with people in power. So that these young women are really speaking out. And I just think it's fabulous. Grace Tame she's Australian of the Year last year, and those in Australia will probably be familiar with that photo of her with the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. It just came out, as Manita mentioned, this idea of a talk. And in this photo, Grace Tame, who was last year's Australian of the Year, it's this perfect photo opportunity with Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia. And she just scowls. He's there smiling broadly, and she's scowling and looking away. She refuses to look at the camera. And I thought, whoa, that is so powerful. Mostly because I would never dare do that. You know, it's just, I would just like smile nicely because it's so ingrained in me to be kind, be polite, don't make a scene, don't make a fuss. You know, just let it go. But, you know, I can imagine I'd be standing there smiling and seething inside. But, you know, she was able to speak out. She could speak her truth. And I think what's so important about this is that she's really using her shadow to recognize shadow. Because shadow is those parts of ourselves, like Manita said, that we don't like, society doesn't like, we repress. Our anger, our ambition, our outrage, all of those dark qualities. But we need those qualities to protect ourselves. We need them to look after ourselves and the planet. That that, you know, I always keep wanting to say Grace Jones, which is, she's a fabulous, strong woman too. Grace Tame, the wild Grace Tame, you know, she recognized what Scott Morrison was doing. He was just using her for a photo opportunity to make him look good. But he had done nothing while she was the Australian of the Year. He had done nothing for women's rights. So she was calling that out. She wasn't just pretending everything was fine and everything is good. She was speaking out. And I think the important thing is that we need our shadows to protect ourselves. If we repress our shadow and say, oh, that's not nice, or, oh, that's okay, they did their best, or, you know, just let it go. If we don't use our shadow, if we repress it, we are vulnerable to getting abused, really. We need our shadow to spot the shadow in other people. If otherwise it's just being naive, you think, oh, they're not really that bad. Oh, it's not really like that. And that's just being naive and leaving ourselves open. But if we can say, no, this is what's actually going on. No, this is the truth. And if we dare to stand up and speak it, then we can expose ourselves. We can say, me too, this is my story. We can be vulnerable. We can show ourselves. And we can show ourselves in the community of this world. And we can look after ourselves and this world. And I think this is what's happening. And I think this is the potential of women in the 21st century. So thank you, Manita. Thank you, everybody. And this is
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Britton. Very good. So as you can see, we have some really powerful women starting. So we have now Kate. Kate is a psychotherapist, family therapist, and trauma counselor. In her free time, she loves to talk philosophy with her friends or write and play tennis. Kate is our life's mysteries and ever seek a more intimate and poetic connection with the divine essence. She is here online to participate in a deeper contemplation of the world that women inhabit today and the potential of what they can bring to our global tomorrow. Just trying to see where Kate is. Kate, are you there?
If the microphone is closed, she can open it by herself.
You can open, Kate, you can open your microphone. Okay, all right, so we will go back to Kate when she comes in. So we have Vivian here. Let's see if we have Vivian.
I'm here, Manita.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely. Lovely. Okay, so maybe, Britt, if you close your screen then, just for, thank you. Your image, just that, okay, that's all right.
I think it's kept. I think it's to.
Okay, all right, so we have Vivian here. So Vivian Bainbridge, she was born in Melbourne. She arrived in Perth in 1983. Following from Perth was 7 years in North America, which resulted, among other things, in 2 daughters who each travel on 3 passports. Her return to Australia was in part prompted by not wanting to raise her children, her 2 girls, in the atmosphere of violence and fear that even in 1995 pervaded the USA. Returning to university, she completed a master in clinical psychology and then worked for approximately 15 years in child protection, an area which is still very dear to her heart. These experiences, among others, highlighted her perception regarding the need we have for a world community in which all are treasured. Her dream is of a world in which conflict is used for growth. Children are a source of delight, and each voice can be heard respectfully. Thank you, Vivian. Please go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Manita, for asking me to be part of this fascinating conversation. I think it's such a wonderful opportunity. Second, I would like to apologise to people that I will have to leave shortly after I've spoken, simply because I have a pre-existing appointment. It's not that I'm trying to be rude. And third, I'm fascinated that Britt and I have clearly been supping from the same kind of universal stream, because much of the things that I want to say, Britt's already kind of alluded to. So there will be some repetition and we'll just have to cope with that. Maybe that says something about how we as women need to expand the possibilities that there are before us, so that we don't have to pick on the 2, 3, 4, 10 people who stand out, but actually we have such a community of women and the feminine that it goes without saying that will be part of the voice of the nation, of the world. So as soon as Manita asked whether I'd present today, the topic that came to mind was community building, the importance of community if we are to survive the next century and beyond, and the central role that women have in this endeavour. So this is community building in for the long haul, as well as our immediate well-being. Women have always built community in some form, whether it's walking to the well and sharing life's joys and sorrows together, or the consciousness-raising groups of the late 60s and early 70s, to the mums and bobs groups that can bring a sense of shared struggle and the understanding from another going through the same experience. The difficulty with these forms of community is that they have an exclusivity that perpetuates some form of in-group and therefore, by definition, an out-group. And if we are to build community that will underpin a world in which all are safe, we need to create a community in which the fundamental shared experience is that of being human. What then do we have to do differently, think differently, if we are to realize this vision? What are the characteristics that we need to develop in ourselves first and in our children? What are the social structures that we need to support? What are the cultural changes that are likely to be necessary to enable the world to move towards the reality that we are all made of the same stuff, and that there can no longer be just me and mine, but rather us and ours, inclusive of all? Initially talking to me, Manita, I thought this talk would be relatively easy to develop. You know, these thoughts have been with me in different forms on and off for years. And then I tried to order them so that I could construct a linear, logical, perhaps even causal description, and discovered that it was much too complex and interrelated for that. Much more a spiral than a line, very much a part of the feminine. And then as I wrote the sentence, it became clear that part of what we need to do differently is to allow the reality of this complexity to be made manifest. Women live with complexity every day, and we must learn to value this capacity. So returning to briefly explore the kinds of changes and growth that we might consider necessary if we are to be able to create a community inclusive to all, I just want to kind of raise a couple of possibilities to just put them on the table. And the first that I thought of was permission. And by that I mean, who is defining what is and what is not okay? As Brett said, recently our 2021 Australian of the Year was excoriated for her behaviour because it did not suit some definitions of polite. But how do we define polite? Is it, as some commentators demanded, that we play nice, or whatever the consequences, or do we value truth and honesty more? Who is it that gives permission for defining culturally acceptable behaviour? We expect our children to tell the truth, but then we ask them to lie in different ways. Surely this is a central discussion to which women must contribute, since we are, despite everything, the primary educators of our children during their infancy, as daycare workers, as teachers. This is not to exclude men who are essential, but rather to open the discussion into what we value as a world community. And this raises the question of the qualities we need to develop: trustworthiness, forbearance, and cooperation. If we are to be able to grow communities in which all are valued, we need to focus on our personal qualities rather than the importance of material possessions. If we are to have peace, we must reduce the current chasm between the rich and the poor. Thirdly, we need to think about the foundational characteristics necessary for potential healthy community. A recognition that our shared humanity is more important than our individual differences. In fact, it is our individual differences which are and will be an essential part of the character and depth of any lasting community. Do we want gardens with a single variety of plants, or do we want an integrated ecosystem? This implies an absence of prejudice, and there must be justice, a concept that is easy to name but much more difficult to operationalize. And finally, the notion of power, and this links back to the notion of permission. Power must be exercised as power with rather than power over. That life does not need to be a zero-sum game, but that the art of community building is to find win-win solutions whenever possible. Yes, this will take more time, but when we are capable of this, the anger of exclusion will no longer be something that we have to live with. So many of the political dramas we see in the world today would be solved or absent, if we could implement even a small element of these considerations. And there are many others that I've not included. We saw community develop on a local scale during the initial months of the COVID-19 outbreak. The challenge is to create the same community fabric without the need for crisis. And a central part of the role of women is as the first educators of our children, and our willingness to step up and take our place in the world, not wanting permission from another. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivian. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, very good. So we're going to move to Sally. Sally Hersfeld. Very good. So Sally was one of the 5 children who grew up in a Quaker family in the hills near Perth. Her father was an executive of UN for many years. Her mother did a lot of voluntary work with Aboriginal families in Allawa Grove, near our airport. Her husband of 60 years was a refugee from Berlin in 1939. Naturally, Sally absorbed ideals from family members and is grateful to have had the opportunity to get value and enjoyment out of working with others on several committees and in schools, and feeling the great sense of achievement when a goal is reached. Thank you, dear Sally.
Thank you, Manita, and thank you for having me with this wonderful group. Well, I've gained so much from being involved with many groups. Girl Guides as a child was very positive. The 4th law, as I remember it, was A guide is a friend to all and a sister to every other guide. It's been wonderful to see how guiding is so beneficial, whether the girls are from a metropolitan area, in our regions of WA, or outback missions. I have had companies in all of these places. The Society of Friends, or Quakers, in countries all over the world. My interpretation of our motto is walk carefully and positively over the world, seeking and answering to that of God in every person. Being with my parents on United Nations and Aboriginal welfare organisations has been beneficial. My first teaching appointment was on a mission at Ulmbulgurri, out of Wyndham. The accepted plan then was to assimilate, hence the stolen generation. I found integration to become more beneficial. That is, joining in corroborees and walkabouts, understanding the best of their culture. Later, with the Pindan Cooperative at Port Hedland, I was teaching students so they could get jobs in the community. I still enjoy contact with one of my ex-students of 60 years ago, who is now a respected elder, not only of the women, but of all her people in that area. Marriage and motherhood came to me, so that was most important for many years. As a parent, I tried to lead by example. Other things that I've gained from is belonging to the PNC, etc. I have gained benefit from belonging to Country Women's Association, Seroptimist International, community groups raising funds for retired citizens, looking after domestic violence victims, building community gardens, honouring historical people, etc. And one big thing has been Peace Day with the United Nations on September the 27th. Imagine the pleasure on a child's face when they see their article about solving a conflict peacefully into this book that Manita and I helped make. I think the most beneficial group that I've been with has been through school teaching and being involved with the Alternatives to Violence project, AVP, which is an international organisation. A small school at which I became a principal was a church school. The parents decided to change this, so all the children became members of Save the Children Fund and the Gould League nature loving group. With the Alternatives to Violence project, I have joined in workshops around Australia, in other countries, and with communities, groups, schools, and in prisons. In Darwin's men's prison, the elderly woman I was with apologised to the men for not being able to have men in the facilitation team. They said, no, you're good. You're like grandmas. You don't criticise. You just listen and care. So women, join AVP. Apart from belonging to groups, I find it very encouraging to talk with an individual and see their face light up as I admire something about them or join in something they're doing. Internationally and locally, women, we can do wonders. Let's get going. Thank you, Manita.
Thank you, Sally. Wonderful. So now we follow with Annie Girard. Thank you, Annie. Annie is a Western Australia and loves writing and teaching about writing. Her official working life alternated between teaching and journalism, and she now spends a good deal of her official retirement life editing non-fiction and occasionally a fictional text or two. She sometimes puts the computer aside and passes on some of her long-held passions about the written language to keen writers and shows them that she believes to be the best way to create images for the readers. In 1990s, when the interest of her free mental health loan rose to 18%, she sold it and took her 3 sons to France to see the land of her forefathers, thereby starting another story about which she plans to gather all the written bits together as soon as she finds the time. Thank you, Annie. Turn on your microphone.
Unmute.
Annie.
Got it. Better?
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
you
you,
did.
Manita, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. Hello, writers everywhere, particularly it's to you. My working life in Western Australia led me to read a lot of material as background research for various articles, as well as for enjoyment. And of course, I read as much of Ernest Hemingway's work as I could find, and a few biographies of his colourful life. But recently I came across a quotation from a woman called Martha Gellhorn, whose name rang a faint bell, and I Googled her. The information I found blew my mind because of today's subject, the potential of women in the 21st century. As here was a woman, the history of whose potential in the 20th century, despite her amazing ability and actions, disappeared largely from history because she was married to Ernest Hemingway for about 5 of her 90 years. This American woman who moved to Paris to write novels at the age of 21, who can blame her, reported on wars around the world for 50 years, as well as published numerous books, some of which include, in 1959, The Face of War, a collection of articles of war. The Lowest Trees Have Tops in 1967, which is a novel about McCarthyism. An account of her travels, including one trip with Hemingway called Travels with Myself and Another in 1978, and a collection of her peacetime journalism, The View from the Ground in 1988. She knew the very famous as well, from Franklin D. Roosevelt's wife Eleanor to Australian journalist John Pilger, and was well enough known by the US President John F. Kennedy for him to ask her if she knew of any quiet way to be able to sneak out of the White House, because he knew that she had lived there at one time. Oh, by the way, she did know a way to sneak out. Yes, she moved in remarkable circles around the world. I knew nothing of all this, and now I can't wait to find those books and read them. But the more I find out about her amazing life, the more I wonder why I, an Australian exposed to American books and movies throughout my life, the only place I ever encountered her name came through Hemingway's biography, and no mention of her war correspondent, non-fiction writer or novelist status emerged enough for me to remember anything but her name. Why? Because apart from Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters, very few women writers figured famously. Sorry, I think my computer's doing something. Hold on, I'll find my place in a minute. Apart from Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, very few women writers figured famously during my university days in the 60s. And even my return to journalism and English studies in the early 80s meant that I bought books mostly by men, except possibly by local writer Elizabeth Jolly. But now the potential for women writers in the 21st century seems to be changing. The recent ABC TV series, Books That Made Us, starring Australian actress and screenwriter Claudia Carvin, recently identified a small number of women writers who made a remarkable journey through Australian literature. Miles Franklin with My Brilliant Career, Helen Garner with Monkey Grip, and Kate Grenville with The Secret River. These few women writers comprise a small percentage of all the writers portrayed in the series. And of course, Stella Miles Franklin used her masculine middle name as author, like Henry Handel Richardson, whose real name was Ethel Florence Lindsay Richardson. Male authors traditionally ruled literature until the mid-20th century. However, Carvin introduced us to a more recent woman writer, Alexis Wright, great name, hey, who not only produced her second work, an innovative creative text, Carpentaria, but also became the first Indigenous writer to win the premier Australian Book Prize, the Miles Franklin Award, in 2007. Carvin says in the program that Talk Around Town mentions Carpentaria as a potential Nobel Prize winner for literature nominee. Now, that's what I call potential for women in the 21st century. So women everywhere who love to write, and I know lots who do, keep it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie. Very kind of you. All right. Do we have Dr. Sadhana Bose? Let's have a look.
Yes, you do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Lovely.
You can
Lovely.
see me, Manita?
Thank you. Okay.
Is it
Well-
possible for me to share my screen, Manita?
Yes, that's fine. You can do it.
Okay. Thank you. Just give
So
me.
can I read a little bit of your
Sure.
So Dr. Sadhana has an extensive curriculum, so I will only be able to read some of it. Dr. Sadhana Bose is a public health physician who works across Australian, British, and Indian health systems. Graduating from Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Science in India, Sadhana completed her specialist training in public health medicine from Oxford University or Oxford Deanery in England. She holds a postgraduate degree in community medicine in India, MPH from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and is a member of the Royal College of Physicians, UK. So she is a very accomplished physician, including a founding academic member of Curtin University Medical School. So Sadhana's portfolio of focuses on social justice. She is the founder, director, and chair of India-based rural NGO Sarasvati Wabasti Foundation Trust. Sadhana also serves as director, Eastern Indian Palliative Care NGO, director, Wapso Indian, an agrotechnology company, Director of Western Australia Geriatric Specialist, and State Vice President, Secretary of Hindu Council of Australia, WA chapter. In her spare time, Sadhana volunteers with a team of doctors to help advocate and alleviate Central India's agrarian crisis. So we have the pleasure of having a very accomplished person like all of you, another accomplished person. Thank you. Okay, Sadhana, please go ahead.
Many thanks, first of all, Manita, and my sincere apologies for the elaborative biography I sent across to you. Having listened to all the previous speakers and next lot of speakers, I'm sure there are far more accomplished people than myself. I just had the bio I had to share with you, didn't have time to edit it. Thank you also to Universal Great Brotherhood for bringing us all lovely human beings together today to examine and explore the potential of women in the 21st century. I just want to ask, can everybody see the slide that I've shared?
No.
No, not yet.
Just
Right.
as a blind recording, that's all.
Right. Right. There's probably a reason why I can't. I might have to close it. No worries. I'll just get on with talking in that case.
Yes, please. Okay, go ahead.
Right. To quote Mahatma Gandhi, we need to be the change we seek. I believe everything we want to see happen begins with oneself. And given today's topic, I would like to extend that to all fathers, mothers, and the wider society. I would like to specifically share my thoughts on our contribution towards the well-being of all beings. In my view, well-being of all beings boils down to justice and fairness for all. As with everything else, Contribution towards the well-being of all beings begins with oneself. I believe that social justice is everyone's business. Personally, two Sanskrit ancient slokas continue to dictate my life. One says Seva Sarvo Dharma, duty above self, because selfless service is the highest form of service to the Lord. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhagvadet. What it essentially means is, may all sentient beings be at peace. May no one suffer from illness. May all see that which is auspicious, and may no one suffer. May there be peace, peace, and peace. There are thousands of inspirational men and women who are working for the good of society without any expectations. Thank goodness for them. Future generations need more such people to make the world fairer, more secure, more equitable, and sustainable, where we all can live in harmony, not just with each other, but with all other creatures, big and small, as well as with Mother Nature. For this, we need to keep chipping away at man-made material inequalities. For it is these inequalities that lay the foundation for global discord, conflict, and destruction. These inequalities exist at the micro level within the four walls of many, many homes, and within the walls of all communities, and at macro levels within and between countries. For example, in this century, Liberia and Germany have shown us the power of feminine politics through Ellen Sirleaf and Angela Merkel. Now just imagine for a second a Chinese, Russian, American, or Middle East defense minister in current times, and what good they could do. The world needs the strength of both men and women, yet male energy is what is dominating the world. The common perception that men desiring to succeed in the workplace is great, and when women take leadership roles, it's not so good because they're entering a man's world at the cost of their home life. We are making good progress, but we need to accelerate the progress. And where there is disharmony, discord, we need to help sustain nurturing and healing. We need to look beyond external genders, external identities, and appreciate the inner potential of all human beings. Treat alike the individual potential in our daughters and sons. Constantly look at domestic responsibilities with fresh, gender-free eyes. Because by the time girls become women, most of them cannot fulfill their potential because of factors outside the control. A shift in how fathers, mothers, families empower their daughters and sons will create a level playing ground at home and in society. From a young age, regardless of race and religion, we need to nurture leadership in girls and nurture empathy in boys by educating and enabling a positive mindset towards fundamental gender beliefs. Many times such roles come at a personal cost to women, and we need to stop that. The world we live in applauds and propagates selfishness, be it the current Russia-Ukraine war, or China-Taiwan skirmishes, or Iraq's invasion by NATO, or economic recessions that we have seen all through the century. In my view, and I'm happy to be corrected, this is because we continue to have fewer women in leadership roles, whether that is in politics, organizational management, general workplace, or the corporate sector. Women form 51% of the world population, but we are hardly reflected in leadership roles. In politics, it figures to less than 20% around the world. Change at societal level is only sustainable when there is real change within homes and households. Homes need to be the center of nurturing, healing, and positive reinforcement of what we want to see happen in society. For women to fully participate in power structures, we need to break real and imagined barriers. The changing role of men and women need to be positively nurtured through a change in attitude, perception, and behavior. No age is too early to start. For example, I grew up in a household where all chores and opportunities were free of gender. So as a wife and as a parent, it came naturally to me to resist the temptation of going pink with my baby girl or blue with my baby boy. And I made sure all through their growing years, they did everything the same way with equal opportunities. And I personally find that spirituality can show us the way. It has the potential to nurture, heal, and empower every living being in this universe. Spirituality is not man-made. We are all born with it. It is about realizing who I really am and how I can help myself and others develop. It is a journey that has to come from within. At 52 years of age, I'm able to forgive easily or work for the larger good without expectations because I've spent a lifetime cultivating these habits. Because spiritual consciousness helps me connect with that which is beyond and above me. I personally believe I'm just a soul living in this female Indian Hindu body in this birth. I could be a rat or a dog in my next birth based on what I do in this birth. So I do hold all the qualities that the great Lord above holds, but only in quality, not in quantity. So giving a bit of my time every day to the spiritual well-being of the world, practicing meditation with myself, have helped me recharge my spiritual batteries. Because as we think, so we become. Whatever we hold continuously in our mind, that goes a long way, not just in shaping our own destiny, but in the destiny of others. So diligently cultivating a permanent background of thought process will go a long way in habit formation and behavior. With that, I think I would like to conclude because I've gone on for a long time. I would just like to summarize that there are countless ways every individual can contribute towards a common future and stop exploitation of the good that we have inherited. Our current times ask of us to act selflessly with the good of the world guiding our thoughts, words, and actions. By thinking globally and acting locally, we can tackle the various inequalities that hamper our journey towards a safe future for all. Each one of us that is here today has something to bring to the table, and no contribution will be too small or too big. Every one of us is a source of untapped power, a billion watts of energy, and fountains of creativity. By rooting out discrimination and stereotyping that comes in the form of color, age, gender, nationality, and so on, by courageously reaching out to non-traditional roles at home and at school, by championing equality for all, we can make this happen. Using the foundation laid by the blood, sweat, and freedom of our predecessors, let us continue this journey and make sure we do not just live for ourselves, because social justice is a powerful antidote. A little bit of it goes a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sadhana, Dr. Hovea Sadhana Bose. Thank you very much, guys. Please turn on your image. We haven't been able to see you during your speech. Thank you. Lovely.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I think I was trying to switch off the PowerPoint presentation. So maybe.
All right, but we have heard it beautifully. Okay. All right. So now we follow with Dr. Cedar Chamber.
Hi, Manita. I'm here.
Hello. Hello, Dr. Cedar. Thank you. Lovely. So Dr. Cedar is also has a very extensive curriculum, which I am going to read a small part of it. Dr. Cedar Chambers, an Australian development scholar, international social researcher, and public sector expert, specializing in public policy, community development, gender equality, women's interests, rural and regional development. Her work and research in Australia, Egypt, and Jamaica have contributed to over 10 years of practice designing, implementing, and evaluating social and economic developmental policies, programs, and projects. She completed her PhD in public policy in 2019 at Curtin University. Dr. Chambers now works as a Creating Community Australia as a research consultant, where she contributes to the design, implementation, and evaluation of socio-economic projects and programs across government and the private sector. As a volunteer, she serves the WA community through the United Nations Association of Australia WA Division, as a member of the Executive Committee and advisor to the Gender Equality Committee. She is also a member of the Perth Caribbean Association. Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here too, Dr. Sadia.
Thank you. Thank you, Manita, and thanks to all the amazing ladies who have spoken earlier. I am super grateful to you, Manita, and the Universal Great Brotherhood for coordinating this gathering. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I now live and work, the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, and I pay my respect to their leaders past, present, and future. I also want to pay my respect to the women and men who have led the amazing pathway that I now walk on to promote social justice and gender equality. Without their work and their contribution, some have gone unnoticed, but I believe it's because of their contribution why we are able to continue this movement and champion the cause for social justice. So I want to acknowledge them. When I looked at the question, Manita, I was wondering, how do I structure the presentation, and what do I then talk about in the 5 minutes? Sorry, Gabrielle, do you mind putting your putting on mute so that your dog can enjoy his freedom of barking? So for me, I was wondering, how then do I structure to highlight the potential of women in the 21st century? For me, I am, even though I'm young, I think I've lived a substantial amount of my life. And so my focus is on the potential of my 2 daughters. My husband and I, we have 2 girls, 13 and 14. And as if the Lord was ensuring that I continue my pursuit of gender equality, He ensured that I have 2 young ladies who will carry on that trend. But I think in terms of ensuring that they are able to live in a world of social justice, or they themselves promote it, some of the points that I pulled from the questions I'll then highlight. So the first one I want to talk about is understanding the knowledge of who I am and who we are. And that question brought me to the slogan of Ubuntu, which is Ngai Bantu term, which means humanity. And it's sometimes translated as I am because we are. And the essence of it is that we are not islands living alone. We survive on each other. And I think it was Brittany, or one of the earliest speakers, Britain, or one of the earliest speakers, who pointed out that we make up a diverse ecosystem, meaning we survive on each other in one way or another. We impact each other's lives. And I think the idea of Ubuntu is critical to how we live and how we pursue social justice, if we are to survive beyond this dispensation that we now live in, and also for us to have a greater appreciation of what social justice is. I think if we understand that I am very much human and valuable as the next person, then it will give us a greater appreciation of how we relate to each other and how we communicate with each other. So that's a fundamental perspective that we as women and men hold, that will help us to move forward in creating greater potential for ourselves and for other women. And for me, in terms of practicing that at home, I believe children are able to do what they see, not necessarily what they hear. So for me at home, it's important to model that my children are valuable, even though I'm the mother or I'm older. I need to ensure that they understand that they're valuable in and of their own rights, and not because they are my children, so to speak. So some of the things that my husband and I do to highlight and to emphasize how valuable our daughters are is that we ensure that we, as they develop and show their independence, which they have no problem in highlighting. Having two teenagers, it's like full on. It's like, I'm here and I'm here to stay. So what we realized probably a year or two ago is that they value knowing what we have planned as a family. So if we're having visitors over, or if we're going somewhere, when they were 10 or 8 thereabout, we would just dress them and take them with us. But now they're like, where are we going? Can you tell us in advance? So now we have adjusted how we communicate with them. In fact, it was last night I basically did the schedule for March, so that they can now know what we have planned, because for them, that's a sign of respect and valuing who they are. We also are now learning to practice how to listen without judgment. Oftentimes, as we were parents when they were younger, we would listen to correct. Now we are taking on a different posture where we listen to understand and to validate who they are, and also understand their aspirations. And one of the things that they have commented about is if and when we don't acknowledge their emotions, they express that clearly, and we ensure that we keep the communication open so that they can feel valued. And why is this important for us as a non-Australian? It's important for our children to be valued at home, so that when they go out in the world, they understand that they are important, that they matter. And so they will no longer, in essence, their pursuit of social justice, they will be 2 or 3 steps up the ladder in living it and practicing it once at home, once they are valued at home. So that's something that we do at the practical level. And for us, just one other thing, because we live in a world that is rife with injustice and inequality, I too also have to bring them into that awareness of what are some of those inequalities that they might encounter, and possibly that they might need to work to address. And just want to highlight the issue of the gender pay gap, that even though decades ago, women, their education, women's education was not as much as it is now, I would say, and women's participation in the labor force is far more advanced than it was probably a decade or 2 decades ago. But even with that progress, we still find that in Australia and even in the US, women get paid 20% less than that of men for the same work. So that's one of the hurdles that they will have to come face to face with, and then how do they live and work towards that. The issue of shared caring is also something that we model. So my husband and I, we share roles at home so that the girls understand that it's important that we work as partners and not necessarily as one dominating the other. And so those are some of the things that my family and I model to show our girls that social justice is real and they too can practice it. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate this time, and I'm so grateful to to hear from all you amazing ladies.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Really much appreciated your contribution, like all the other ones, great women. So we continue on with Sophia, who is here in the room. And so Sophia is employed as a senior social worker in mental health. She's also a firekeeper and holds monthly community fires as part of the Sacred Fire International Foundation. She participates in the Australian Songline Journey, a talk through the desert with Indigenous elders and Australian families and communities from non-Indigenous background. The purpose of the walk is to connect respectfully and to deepen roots in our Australian land, the place now called home. Sophia is a yoga teacher. She conducts regular classes in the community and holds monthly yoga retreats at the Hovea Ashram. Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you, Manita. Thank you, everybody. And I feel really honoured to participate in this wonderful event. So I have many roles and I have many hats in my life, but something I didn't include in my bio is my hidden role as a mother. My daughter Ophelia would be 12 years old this Friday if she had not died before her birth. I want to talk about the hidden aspects of motherhood. This is my acknowledgement of all the childless mothers in the world whose lives have been marked, changed forever through the loss of their child or children. So I want to start with a dream. In my 20s, I had a dream which I'd like to share with you. There were 4 women aged in their 20s, standing at 4 corners of a space that was square in shape. Each woman wore clothing and a hat to match their unique identity. Standing next to each woman was a woman aged 40 and older. The older woman's outfits were matched to the companions, and they were suitable in her. What stood out for me was their hats. The 8 women walked around the square in unison, together in pairs, along the perimeter of the square. They stopped at each corner for a while, savouring its offerings and then moving on. They traversed the outline of the square. And now in the 21st century, they continue to move around in my consciousness, not just in a square, but they spiral around, returning to the beginning, richer for our travels. So as I contemplate this dream, especially the hats, each hat speaks to me of the different roles we play in our lives. As a young woman, I thought my destiny was to be in the world as a mother, to have and raise a family, to have a job and a career, and a job helping people. When I found out that my daughter Ophelia might not even survive into birth, I chose to continue my pregnancy. Even if her life was cut short, I would still be her mother. How did I know how to mother my lovely little baby who left before she was born? At the time, it seemed that I was just making it up as I went along. But maybe I didn't make it up at all. Maybe I was drawing on the wisdoms of the scores of women behind me and around me and beside me, who had suffered the loss of a child, who had learnt from their grief and experiences, and who were handing their wisdom down to me. The primary woman standing beside me was my beautiful mother, Patricia Margaret Neva, my first teacher. My mother taught me that all life is precious. I took my mother's gifts of wisdom and fashioned it into my own garment of life. Another woman who taught me about neonatal death is my friend Peta Wooten. She was my first social work supervisor. Peta and I worked together in the obstetrics and gynecology ward in my first social work position. She supported me in my decision of how to be a mother to an unborn child and to love Ophelia in the way that I have. Little did I know how the training that I would have from my very first job would come to play in my personal life and shape the decisions about how to be a mother. There are so many ways to be a mother. I still celebrate Ophelia in so many ways, and I have a birthday party for her every year with a princess cake. And now I try to imagine what Ophelia would be like at 12, her concerns, her joys. In a way, I'm still learning, becoming and growing as a mother to her as we travel this life together, Ophelia in the spirit realm and me as her earth mother. In my 20s, I was a young woman reaching out, seeking the support and advice of people who understood me, people who could help me be the best person that I could be. And I offered my gifts related to my stage of life. Now I am older. I have some wisdom and life experience under my hat. A new hat, a different hat. The one I wore, a different hat, different from the one I wore as a young woman. Having worn many hats, I have some wisdom to offer to those who seek my counsel. I can apply my knowledge and wisdom to them to help them on their own path and to make their decisions particular to their own way of life. We all have life experiences that place us in a perfect position to be mentors, role models, and companions to others on their journey. For there to be world peace, we have to allow different ways of being in the world. I speak to the motherhood that has been hidden in my life, so that those of you resonating with my experience may find courage and safety to remember to express those parts of you that are ready to emerge, to end the isolation and loneliness of hidden griefs and unacknowledged aspects of ourselves. We need, as women, to speak out, to reach out. It is time for us to tell our stories. Those of us who do not fit the stereotype of what it is to be a mother can take up our rightful places in the world, to be seen, to be heard, and to be cherished. This way, women can embrace our potential and thrive in the new world. My wish for all of us on this International Women's Day is to embrace our potential for all women and all men and all people in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sophia, beautiful. So we all have our journeys, and it's so beautiful to see it, how we shape it. Very good. So now we have Lorna. Lorna, you have to turn on your microphone. Lorna has been on the Ashram committee for many years and attended the Kumbh Mela in Brazil with Manita in 2010. She retired 2 years ago after 50 years working in schools and universities as a developmental, educational, and school psychologist with children and their parents in mainstream and special education in city and country primary and secondary schools. Her greatest passion now are her 2 young granddaughters, family and friends, keeping fit with yoga, and helping Manita with the ashram. Thank you, Lorna. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Manita. And thank you so much to all these beautiful ladies for their wisdom. I have enjoyed everybody's talk. And you coming last at the end of what was going to be an erudite group of women, I wondered which way to go. And so I asked some young people what they thought and whether they were feminists. And most of them gave me a resounding no. They thought that they no longer saw the need to work on women's rights because gender no longer limits their opportunities. The young women that I met are all in very successful careers with children and families, and they're very confident and everything that we would want them to be. However, I was so surprised that they lacked knowledge of the history of the feminist movement and showed a lack of awareness and empathy for women in less advantaged circumstances as they are. I turned I really felt that men need to be part of this equation. These young women had very strong fathers, very strong women role models in their lives, but that's not so for everybody. So I was delighted to hear some of the conversation around that. So to conclude the session, I'll address the way forward, which I thought anyway, for women to achieve their potential in the 21st century by reading extracts of a talk given by the self-proclaimed feminist Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations. If we are going to include men, 50% of the population in our fight for equality, we need to find men who are willing to do the journey with us if there's going to be any change. The Secretary General of the United Nations spoke on women and power at the UN and the UN's strong commitment to gender equality in everything they do on the 27th of February 2020 in New York. I was interested how we could reawaken the spirit of sisterhood, which has energised feminism throughout history. And in that, we need to foster a new willingness in our young people to embrace Adrienne Rich's maxim that no woman is liberated until we are all liberated. So what needs to be done throughout the world? One of Guterres' first priorities for the UN was to bring more women into leadership positions. This has been alluded to already. On January the 1st, 2020, the UN achieved gender parity, 90 women and 90 men in full-time senior leadership positions. There's a roadmap also in place to achieve parity in all levels in the coming years. This long overdue change is an essential recognition of the equal rights and abilities of women's staff and improves efficiency and effectiveness for the people they serve. Thriving matriarchal societies throughout history and around the world show that patriarchy is not inevitable. Recently, we've seen many young women demanding transformational change From Sudan to Chile to Lebanon, they're calling for freedom from violence, greater representation, and urgent climate action, and questioning economic systems that fail to deliver opportunities and fulfillment for many. We owe these leaders our voices and our support. Quotas are the most effective way to achieve a radical shift in the balance of power. Now is the time for gender parity in governments, parliaments, corporate boards, and institutions everywhere. We need women's voices and contributions at the forefront in peace negotiations and trade talks, at the Oscars and G20, in boardrooms and classrooms, and at the United Nations General Assembly. Gender equality is a question of power, power that has been jealously guarded by men for millennia. It is about an abuse of power that is damaging our communities, our economies, our environment, our relationships, and our health. We must urgently transform and redistribute power if we are to safeguard our future and our planet. That is why all men should support women's rights and gender equality. Women have equalled and outperformed men in almost every sphere. It is time to stop trying to suppress women and start changing the systems that prevent them from achieving their potential. Our power structures have evolved gradually over thousands of years. One further evolution is long overdue. The 21st century must be the century of women's equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. Thank you very much appreciated. And we have Kate now, which we called before, but now we have her. So thank you, Kate, for being with us. So we will introduce you again. So Kate is a psychotherapist, family therapist, and trauma counselor. In her free time, she loves to talk philosophy with her friends or write and play tennis. Kate is awed by life's mysteries and ever seek a more intimate and poetic connection with the divine essence. She is here online to participate in a deeper contemplation of the world that women inhabit today and the potential of what they can bring to our global tomorrow. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much, Manita, and thank you for organising this wonderful hour, and my sincere apologies for my lateness, and I feel a great loss for what I've missed. I've already had tears in my eyes for the three speakers I've heard, so I do hope somebody's recorded things. Look, I took sincerely to 5 minutes, so I just made a sketch. I wanted to speak firstly to a little bit of the history that I see is so important in our evolution. It's probably been mentioned, the importance of the pill and contraception hitting the marketplace, giving us freedom for most of us around our bodies, not everyone, and choices for children and when. That was 1950. A huge change on all our lives. It hasn't reached all around the globe yet, but let's hope it does. Then the importance of the right to vote, 1902, the Commonwealth Franchise Act, which gave women in Australia the right to vote and to stand for federal parliament. Women had to work incredibly hard for this change, and I salute all the women and all the efforts and all the films that have been made about the suffragettes. It's been incredible. Thirdly, the opening of many top positions to women that has occurred. I went to a talk recently by Michelle Fyfe, the first female commissioner of police. It was so good to hear her speak. However, when she first joined the police, just a little bit of like a look at how long it took for real change to come about. When she joined the police force in the 70s, as a young recruit, the men were all given batons and pistols to put on their belts, and the women were given an abundance of stockings and handbags. I was very shocked by that, but we have come a long way since then, and the women do now have their batons. Yes. So jumping across to my perspective on what else has helped women to move forward in evolution the way they have, more quickly over the last years than men have, I believe. I see women as much more connected to themselves than men. Certainly shows up in my practice over 35 years. More connected to their feelings, more connected to the mysteries. It's beginning to change, but it's been very much part of a woman's makeup, more connected to the process of life. You know, I think being the one who carries the embryo and goes through the process, I think women are very connected to their body and to process rather than just the pragmatics of life. I also see women as having very strong social networks and a great ability to talk to each other, to offload, to build friendships, to be connected. Tremendous source of strength for women and relief from the burdens of life. Men, although they have very strong connections in the sporting area, they're still learning to have the honesty of their connectedness. I think women too are more able to meet on whole. Forgive me, the men online, if you don't agree. Just as a general thing, I think women are more able to admit to their mistakes. And I think that goes a long way in their relationships too. So now jumping across to my, a bit more pointedly to my private practice, looking at some of the tough choices I see women today being faced with. Firstly, the tough choices around children. You know, for how long do I pursue my career? You know, do I not have children? When do I have children? Can I care for them, etc.? Do I have the husband to father my children? These are really big questions for women, and there are a lot of women today who are choosing not to have children to just expand their career. It's an enormous decision to make. So just an example, recently I had a couple who came, they just had a 6-month-old baby, and the mother had just, her proposal had just been accepted for her PhD. So what was on her cards was, you know, does she do her PhD while she has her 6-month-old baby? So, oh, that's such a big conversation, isn't it? There are so many elements in there. I don't know that I did a good job, but I feel for the women who feel, and as a result of that session, I actually rang a niece of mine who's got a 1-year-old baby and such an attentive mother. And I said to her, I said, Joey, how would you do a big research undertaking with a young child? And of course, every woman needs to embrace this question herself in her own way, unique to every individual woman. But what opened up for me, which was very good, was Joey is about 38 and has this had a late child, and she talked about the importance when a woman has been in a career that's been hard won, and then she chooses to have a baby. The pressure is on to stay in the career, to go back quickly, and not to lose ground in maintaining, you know, the position that she's attained in that career. And therein, the conflict around, you know, do I do my studies? What's the cost on my child going to be? Where, you know, what's the cost on my career? really delicate questions that have to be weighed up. So, you know, tough. And men are, the husbands are, and the grandparents are very much part of those decisions, because if you take on going back to work very early or doing studies, you need resources of care for your baby. Many issues.
Thank you, Kate.
Have I gone too long? Oh,
yes. So is something urgent that you need to say so that we can complete, because it's 10:30 already. So
okay.
thank you.
Can I just add one tiny bit? Just coming across to what women are seeking from their men in their new relationships and new families moving forward, and that's the no to the patriarchy, which means no to entitlement of men. Mothers have been responsible in the past, mothers and fathers to entitlement, so no entitlement, and to drop assumptions in the communications, to be able to be more open about their feelings, be more connected to themselves and flexible in the negotiations with their families. And I think moving forward, that women are seeking a partnership with these men and wanting them to grow into the partnership, into what can be a partnership on all levels. And then I feel we will be able to build a vision with our men moving forward into the future, but not on our own, but with our men beside us.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you very much. So we had the opportunity to listen to 10 brilliant women, as we said at the beginning. Thank you very much, Britton Garrett, Kate Barrett Leonard, Vivian Bainbridge, Sally Hertzfeld, Annie Girard, Dr. Savannah Bose, Dr. Cedar Chambers, Sophia and Lorna Dick. You are brilliant women, and this has been taped, and we are very grateful that you participated, and your energy is alive. So we can say that we have a role to play in bringing the energy of women and who we are to the world as a community where we include all beings. Thank you all. Thank you. See you sometime soon, and we will organize something that we can have something together to get to know us, each other a little bit, for maybe a cup of tea or something. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, lovely, beautiful
Thank
people.
you, Manita. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Manita.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you all.
Thanks,
you,
Manita.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Manita. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
That moves ahead and it draws a second. You do have training.
Thank you very much.
Airspace and Ukrainian airfield. So this would be an additive element to what the Ukrainians are already able to do. That would be. Start paying for yourself and Bank of America.
Rosita.
So you.